Are you using RabbitMQ for sending message or event in your application? Did you know that you can easily integrate it with .NET Aspire? I'm Said. In this video, I'm going to show you how to use RabbitMQ in .NET Aspire. Here, I've created a sample project from the Aspire template. If you don't know how to create the Aspire project, I already created another video. Please go watch it and then come back here. In that video, I completely explained about the .NET Aspire and how it works and how you can create a template project for the .NET Aspire. We have 4 projects here: AppHost, API, Web, and also Service Default. Now we want to add RabbitMQ component using .NET Aspire step by step. First, let me add a project, a console application for using RabbitMQ. Actually, RabbitMQ is a message broker. So always you have publisher and consumer. Publisher will send a message to queue, and then consumer will get that message and process it. Okay, so we need a consumer project. The best practice is always separating a consumer project for processing all those messages. So here I want to add a console application as our consumers. Let me call it Aspire template.RabbitMQ consumers. And I'm going to use the .NET 8. Right, that's it. This is the GitHub project. I want to show you something here. So if you see the Git status, it says you add this consumer project. Right, so far so good. As we know that AppHost is responsible for running all of the executable project. So for example, here API and web is executable. And also here we add another one as a consumers. So we need to tell AppHost, please run the new project as well. How can I do that? I just need to add the project consumer to the AppHost. But now the interesting point, if I get the Git status again, there is a lot of changes. I only added the consumer project to the AppHost. Usually it should only change the CS project, but we can see there is another changes for the project.assets.json or another one. Why is that? Let's see. For telling the AppHost to run in our project, we need to tell it to run the project. We can see there is a new keyword in .NET Aspire called projects that contains some assembly path, the project path, all information that AppHost needs to run the project. So when we add a new project, it will update these projects as well. So actually the reason for having this kind of changes here is exactly for this one. So for example, if I say projects dot, I can see the Rabbit consumers here, right? So that's it. We add consumers to the AppHost, but we need for the running the RabbitMQ, there is set of extension methods on the builder. So if I say add Rabbit, there is 2 extension methods. One is RabbitMQ connection and RabbitMQ container. The connection is you can set a connection strings, the existing one. If you have your RabbitMQ, you can set your connection string and it works. Otherwise, you can say, please add the RabbitMQ container. It means we are telling the AppHost, go to the Docker Hub, download the RabbitMQ image and run it for me. So I want to use this RabbitMQ container, and we need to set a name. Let's set messaging as a name, and also there is another options for setting ports and also password. I don't want to set a password, let it be the default one. But for password, I want to set it Spire. So it will download the RabbitMQ image and then set the password. Let's see what we have in this method. As you can see, there is two environment variable. First one is RabbitMQ default user, always guest. And the password, if you set, it will use your password. Otherwise, it will set the guest. But now we set it to the Spire and user is guest. And also for the image, using the RabbitMQ, and then tag is management, right? So we can set the container and setting a name for the container. And we need to put it in the variable called Rabbit. So we just told the AppHost to getting the Rabbit. But now we need to tell AppHost to run the consumers as well. So we can say builder.addProject and also projects.RabbitConsumer. We can call it consumers. And these consumers needs to use the Rabbit, right? So we can say with reference Rabbit. Done. At runtime, AppHost will use this Rabbit for the consumers as well. Actually, when we are trying to use this RabbitMQ container and name it as a messaging, at runtime, it will build a connection string and call it as a messaging. We can see this connection string when we run the project. Okay, let's run the project now and let's see what we have here. Always in .NET Aspire, there is a few other projects like the dashboard, like the OTLP for the Open Telemetry server for gathering all the logs. And then it tried to run our projects like API, like web, and here is consumers. Okay, let me open this port. If I run it, here is our dashboard, API service, web frontend as usual, and also the consumer. It calls finished. Why? Because we have nothing in consumers. It only logs the hello world and will finish. Okay, after we need to change it to use the DI to run it as a long running process. But let's see what we have in the container. Here is the name that we set it as a RabbitMQ container name. And also here is the image, RabbitMQ, and the name of the container is management, the tag. If I want to open this endpoint, if you use RabbitMQ before, always RabbitMQ will expose a URL for dashboard of the RabbitMQ. So we set the guest as a user and also Aspire as password. Okay, so here you can see what is the connection. There is no connections to this RabbitMQ and also no channels exchange. There is some default one for the, if you use the Rabbit, you know all about this kind of things. And we don't have any queues yet, right? Let's go for adding a consumers for Rabbit. First of all, we need to use Aspire RabbitMQ NuGet package. If we want to use one of the components of the Aspires, always we need to use one of the Aspire's NuGet packages. For example, for using Rabbit, there is a lot of NuGet packages like, I don't know, EasyNetQ, RabbitMQ clients, the official one, but we need to use the Aspire one. So if I go to the NuGet packages and search for Aspire, I can see lots of this kind of NuGet packages, but I need this package, Spire RabbitMQ client. So let's install it. I accept, and it's done. If I check CS project, we can see there is a RabbitMQ client version 8 preview 1. So now we need to add dependency injection and running host for the consumers, because these consumers will run as a long running and try to listening to the RabbitMQ. So let me just clean it up here. Always when you add another project to your .NET Aspire solution, you need to add service default if it's executable. For example, for the API, we always add this service default, or for the web as well. So here for the consumer, we need to add the service default for taking care of extra tools for the .NET Aspire, like the logging, like the health check, anything. So now let's add host. Okay, I add these lines. You can see that there is service default and also add RabbitMQ. This add RabbitMQ is part of that Aspire RabbitMQ NuGet package. And we should use the same name, because in the AppHost, we name it as a messaging. And here we are using that messaging. There is another settings that you can set. If I want to see what we have here, something like tracing, you can set it for the OpenTelemetry logging. Do you want to trace your project, your RabbitMQ? Yes or no, true or false. Retry count, default is 5, connection string, some settings here that I don't want to use them. I just want to go for the default settings. So currently we add the RabbitMQ, but if we want to see what is the inside this message, here is the RabbitMQ.client, the official NuGet package for the C#. So .NET team is using the RabbitMQ client behind the scenes. So if you use it before, it's really simple for you. But let's see what they are doing here. They are adding interfaces for the eye connection. If you want to connect to the RabbitMQ, you need to use this interface, eye connection, for publishing a message, getting a message, anything. So that's it. It's all about this kind of things. Nothing special here. They are trying to get the connection string, injecting eye connection to the dependency injection. For example, here, if you set the tracing true, trying to OpenTelemetry, add OpenTelemetry, health check as well. We added the messaging for RabbitMQ, but now we need a consumer for getting all of those messages from the queue, right? So I want to add a class here and name it order processing job. Okay, I add this codes here to not wasting time. This order processing job is a background service. So it's actually a hosted service, which is using for long running jobs. We injected this eye connection, as I mentioned, is for using RabbitMQ client, and also this is for channel. Here is the using RabbitMQ and eye connection interface for defining your queues and also for start listening on that queue. It's very simple and straightforward. I don't want to explain this one because it's part of the RabbitMQ client. But if we want to check it very quickly, if you want to use the app settings, you can. Otherwise, I set the orders and get eye connection from dependency injection, and also create the channel, declare queue. If queue doesn't exist, we'll create one. Otherwise, reuse the existing one. And for the consumer, we need to add these methods. Every time that there is a new message to the queue, it will call these events for the received. And this process message will get the messages, and then we will continue and complete this method as well. All order processing message as a background service, we will call this execute async, and we put this logic for setting the consumer. And now we need to add this hosted service to BI. So we can say services, add hosted service, and then order processing job. Done. Let's try and run the project and see what we have. As I mentioned, I want to do it step by step. Okay, it's run. And let me refresh this page for the dashboard. Okay, nice. Now we can see our consumers project is in running state. Why? Because when you are using this host, it will run and keep as a long running until you shut down the application. So the state is running and correct. And also our container is running. Let's open and see what we have as a new connections. Okay, we don't have queue, but actually we should have. Let's see what's the problem. We add the order processing here and also messaging. Let me check if there is a, yes, same name, consumer with referencing it, right? So what is the issue here? And also here, if let me run the project again and let's see what is the issue. Actually, that's the good things about live coding, and I like it really. And let's see. Okay, so it tried to run the other projects, but it seems this execute async didn't run. Why is that? Because if it's run correctly, this one should run the background service. Okay, we have some error here. Let's see what we have in the log for the consumers. Okay, now we have some logs here. It says for connecting to RabbitMQ, there is some problem, but after it's already connected. Why? If you remember, the default retry connect is 5 times. It 4 times failed, but last time it connected to the RabbitMQ. Why is that? Sometimes because we have separated part of the project. So maybe before that container ran, this consumer project run sooner and try to connect to the RabbitMQ. But there is no RabbitMQ up and running. And it tried 5 times, but actually it's running. When it's running, we expect that here, actually this one is okay, because this is not running by the Visual Studio debugger for debugging anything. It's actually run by the AppHost, right? But here we expect that there should be at least one queue called order. Let me go to the container and open this container, because every time the port is changed, because every time it run the Docker image and specify the new port for it. User is guest, password is Aspire, connection. Now we have a new connection. And if I go to the queues, I can see there is a new queue called orders that our consumer project added this one, right? So currently we have the consumers continuously listening to the queue and listening to the RabbitMQ broker to getting new message. But there should be someone to publish a message. There is a publisher and consumer. We have the consumer, but we need to add the publisher right now. I want to use an API. When I call that API, it will send a message to the queue. Okay, so let's go to the API project. First of all, when I say API project wants to use the RabbitMQ, means we need to tell AppHost. Always keep in mind the AppHost is the executor of anything. So when API service needs to use the new component, it means AppHost needs to allow that project to use a reference. So here we need to set the reference of RabbitMQ to our API service. So let me put it up of this API service, and then simply we can say this API service wants to use Rabbit. Done. Easy. That's it. This is the first part. And also, API service wants to use Rabbit, wants to publish a message to the Rabbit broker. So we need to add the Spire RabbitMQ Nugget package. I need to go to the Nugget and then search Spire and Rabbit. Install, accept, done. And now again for the API, just like the consumer, we use add RabbitMQ and then set the same name as a connection string, because this one will set the connection string to the environment variable under the connection string. I will show you how it will work and set environment variable for the connection string. We need to use the same name. And here is the weather forecast. I want to add another endpoint here. So here is the endpoint. I already add the code. This is a send message for calling the API and sending something to the queue. This is a get. Actually, it should be post. But for easy, call the API from browser. Please accept it from me. Here is the code. Again, it's part of the RabbitMQ client. It's using the kind of creating channel, the creating queue, and then publish a message to the queue. Here again, we are reading this queue name from the app setting. So let me add the app setting if you want to use. We can say RabbitMQ. What is the name? She is queue name. The value is orders. Done. And also here, the body of the message should be in bytes. For example, if you have, usually it's like this, you are serializing a model, put it to the queue, and then in the consumer side, you want to deserialize this message, put it to the model and use and process that message. For example, we want to add a model here, class, order model, add this properties like name, we put it as a label, and then also like amount. That's enough. So let me just put it like order, and if I can say message from API, amount is 1000. Nice. Here is the point. Order message is in API project, but we need the same model for the consumer project. So that's fine to add another project like common project for putting this kind of model. So I want to add a class library here and name it template.common. Okay. So let me just move this class here. Okay. And If I want to change the file, yeah, right. So now just I want to add project comment to the API, and then we can use the model. And I need to add the namespace. And also let me put some random values as well here. I want to call multiple times this API, and let's see what we have. Now I'm publishing a message to queue, and in the other side, in the consumer, I need to process this message. It means first I need to deserialize it and then log it somewhere. So in the project, in our background job, and then this method for processing the messages. If I want to deserialize it using system text.json serializer, deserialize. Oh, I need to add the common project here as well for using the order model, right? And the message needs to, I can use the message, the span here for the read-only span of the bytes. And if I log what we have in the log information, and then simply we can say message name model. We expect that this should not be null. If it's null, I let them through exception. And amount is nice. I think that's is done. We deserialize the incoming messages. Also, we publish a message as an order. And also we use the messaging. We told AppHost add the Rabbit reference for the API service as well. Now let's run the project. Also, dashboard is run, OpenTelemetry is run, and it will try to run the other projects. Okay, and if I open the things here, consumers running. If I check the logs for the consumers, first try, okay. Now we are connecting to the Rabbit. One of the points that I wanted to mention here, when we are trying to, for example, in the API, we are saying add RabbitMQ messaging. And also we told AppHost to reference the RabbitMQ. What it means? It means the AppHost will inject one environment variable for RabbitMQ connection string. Okay, so we have connection string, double underline, and then messaging. What we have here, this is the connection string of our Rabbit. User guess, password expire, blah, blah, blah. So that's the point. When we are adding or simply adding this line, we don't care about, okay, what is the connection string, what is the other stuff to connect to the Rabbit. Because .NET Aspire will take care of all the pre-requirements for connecting to the RabbitMQ. That's the beauty of .NET Aspire. Let me connect to the dashboard again, user guest, password expire. We already have this order queue. There is nothing in the queue, right? If I call the API, this is the default one, and our API is send message. Let me just copy, paste it here. Okay, message sent. Now we can see there is one message coming to broker. This is the message rate. If I call it again, another one sent. So we can see another spike here. That's it. But if I want to check this consumer's log, because we are logging message, name, order name, and also amount, we can see the logs for the consumer. And here is the message from API. This good, and amount is 1000. For example, if I send another message, I would see another log here. That's it. So we could add a RabbitMQ container, run that container, add consumers for consuming and processing all of the messages from a queue, and then add the publisher for sending a message to the queue. That's all you need for your, event sourcing or sending a message between your microservices. All you need is a publisher, a consumer, and then RabbitMQ broker in the middle for getting the messages and dispatching the messages between them. That is one of the interesting components in the .NET Aspire. We will have another videos about the other components in the .NET Aspire. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Thank you for your time. Bye.